Hello there and welcome to my review of the fifth film in the James Bond franchise, You Only Live Twice. This film sees the return of Blofeld, Bond's arch nemesis. So it's the first time we actually get to see him on screen as a fully formed character rather than just someone sat in a chair. We just usually see like a hand stroking a cat or whatever. But in this one we actually get Blofeld. So this is essentially the big showdown we've been waiting for. So this film sees Blofeld trying to start a war between the US and Russia on behalf of China, and he does it by stealing US and Russian space shuttles with a craft that he has created to literally swallow them up. It goes into space and it swallows these shuttles. Of course, the US think it's the Russians who are stealing their shuttles, and the Russians think it's the US who are stealing theirs. But the important question is this film any good? Well, to be honest, I was expecting quite a lot from this film, because finally we're getting a showdown between Bond and his arch nemesis. This guy's been built up over the course of a few films, so I really wanted to see something special. And I was a little bit disappointed, if I'm honest. I find that Blofeld in this film, as played by Donald Pleasence, is a little bit disappointing. I know a lot of people like Pleasence in this role, but for me, it just comes off as a little bit weak. He comes off as slightly creepy in a stalkerish kind of way, as opposed to menacing in a megalomaniacal villain kind of way. Also, there's a lot of cultural stereotypes with regards to Japan, and some of those stereotypes may have a foundation in reality, who knows, but either way, just in like watching it in today's times, it doesn't quite sit well. And the idea that they can dress Sean Connery up to look like a Japanese person and have him fit in just nicely is quite laughable, quite frankly, and I'm sure it was back then, even as it is today. I find that the plot for this film takes far too long to get going. There seems to be a lot of unnecessary elements to it. When Bond goes to meet Henderson, he has to meet another two people before he can get into Henderson, and one of these is very unnecessary, and the other one, Aki, could have been introduced later in the film. There wasn't really a necessity for her to be introduced at that point, and it serves as nothing more really to get a glimpse at Japanese culture, because we go to this sumo wrestling contest, and that really does seem to be the only point for these scenes, setting up that world that Bond now has to operate in. However, all this does lead to a rather entertaining fight sequence between Bond and Osato's henchman, this really big guy. They have a fight in Osato's office, but it kind of really begs the question, why did he take Bond to Osato's office? I mean, we see in the film that the guy thinks that Bond is the other henchman who'd been with him, but it just seems a little contrived that he would throw him over his shoulder. He would drive him there, throw him over his shoulder, then walk all the way up to the office in the top of this building, not only before realising that this guy is Bond and not the other guy he arrived with, but the fact that they go to their boss's office outside of operating hours when the boss isn't even going to be there. It all feels a little bit contrived, a contrived way of just getting Bond to this safe so that he can get some information out of this safe. It doesn't feel like a natural story flow. Those elements just seem really cobbled together, and that's some bad writing on the part of Roald Dahl, I think. The conversation that Bond and Tanaka have at the masseuse parlour is quite laughable and, again, completely unnecessary. They could have had this conversation out in the corridor or on the train or wherever it was they last were. Again, it just feels like they're trying to shoehorn in another aspect of Japanese culture, and some of the dialogue there is quite laughable as well. When Tanaka uses the word or the non-word sexiful, the film seems far too concerned with set pieces. It moves from a car chase, a fight on a docks, and a plane crash, all within the space of about 10 minutes, and it just moves along like that. It's very well paced in that regard, but it's just, we're not getting anything that we necessarily need. It's just an excuse for one set piece after another. And many of those set pieces aren't actually all that good. The famous and much talked about Little Nelly scene is actually just some really bad rear projection. It's quite grating when you see the scenes of the stunt flying and all interspersed with shots of Connery as he's on this rear projected view, and it doesn't mesh very well. Don't know if it did back in the day, but it certainly doesn't now. And then there's the ninjas, the rather entertaining ninjas actually. They offer some really good action sequences towards the end of the film. But again, they're thrown in there because it's kind of Japanese culture, although there weren't many portrayals of ninjas particularly in Western movies of that time. So Bond was quite ahead of the game in this respect in introducing this element, like long before films like Enter the Dragon. So in that regard, it's quite enjoyable, but it does feel again like trying to force these elements of what the West perceived to be Japanese culture into this Bond movie just because they're in Japan. Bond is obviously known for his misogynist attitude towards women, but in this film it often feels like we're expected to take part in that misogyny. We're expected to, I don't know, go along with Bond's outlook on things, and the treatment of women in this film is quite, I don't know, it just leaves a real bad taste in the mouth, I guess. We have this running joke about this woman that Bond is being forced to marry, supposedly having a face like a pig, and we're supposed to feel sorry for him when he's going to marry this woman after a woman he's just been into bed with has been killed. It should have been him that was the target, but she gets killed instead, and he doesn't seem to offer any kind of deep feelings about her death. He's just happy to complain about the fact that he's now going to have to marry this woman who may have the face of a pig. And it's like, are we supposed to feel sorry for him in that? It's just, it's an attitude that it's certainly not fitting with our times, and it's not fitting with my outlook on life. But usually in a Bond film, we can kind of look at those aspects of Bond, and from an outsider looking in, we can kind of look down on them. We can detest them in a way, but it feels like almost in this film we're expected to go along with it, and I'm not prepared to do that. And again, the plot with Bond's wife, with this woman he's got to marry, this agent, this Chinese government agent, it all seems a bit pointless because they're meant to go in there to uncover information. That the whole point of Bond disguising himself as a Japanese man and married is so they can get closer to the island and discover information. But she's an agent. She's a secret agent. Surely she could have gleaned this bit of information without the need to go in there with Bond, which she does anyway. She goes in there and she gets this bit of information about this person who's died going close to the island, close to the volcano part of the island. She doesn't need Bond there for this piece of information to be revealed to her. She could have found it out by herself and then just relayed it to her officials, the people in charge of her. So it all just seems pointless, like many other aspects of this film. And Kissy, Bond's wife, is really badly dubbed. We've had some bad dubbing in the past before in previous Bond efforts, but in this one it's just absolutely atrocious. I probably sound really down on this film. I've been very negative so far, and there may be a lot of Bond fanatics out there who are wondering what the hell I'm talking about, but it's just the way I feel. But what about the positives? Well, I must say that this film does have one of the best title songs from any Bond film. I really like the melody to it. I really like Nancy Sinatra's voice on this song. It's just a really well written, well produced song. One of the better efforts in the Bond franchise. The sets by Ken Adam are absolutely stunning. They're his best work up to this point, certainly in the Bond franchise. The final set at Blofeld's lair, the volcano lair, is absolutely fantastic. At first I thought it might have been model work, but then to learn that actually that is a fully realised set, full scale, is absolutely stunning, and it looks amazing, especially at the end when all the cavalry arrive and they're all kind of coming down on these ropes and they're filling this set and there's explosions and guns going off everywhere. It's absolutely brilliant. There are a couple of really good fight sequences in this film, really well choreographed, really well shot and edited. The one I mentioned already, and the one with Blofeld's henchman at the end, before the henchman gets knocked into the piranha soup. It is a really good fight sequence, so some really good action sequences. But altogether, that's really not enough to save this from being one of the lesser efforts so far in the Bond franchise. I give this film a 5 out of 10. So if you're a Bond fan and you rate this film highly, comment below and tell me what it is you loved about it. Tell me why you think I'm wrong. If you agree with me, agree with me, tell me why you think I'm right. But until next time, thanks for watching. This film sees Bond's arch nemesis, Blofeld, Ernst Stavro